Minnesota Vikings are signing a lot of tight ends. Is TJ Hockenson okay? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much to those of you who listen every single day. Hashtag everydayers, hanging out every other dayers the last few weeks, but we're back. We're doing 5 days a week again, back on the normal schedule from here on out. So thank you for being patient with me for that, but we are back. And if you are new here and you don't know what any of that meant, that's fine. Hello, welcome. My name is Luke. I will be your host, and you can find this show wherever you find your favorite podcasts, whether it is anywhere that you listen to podcasts, any app like the SiriusXM app. You can also find live home broadcasts of, say, basketball playoff games on SiriusXM. Just search out Timberwolves or whatever. You can just search out Locked On Vikings anywhere you listen to podcasts, as well as YouTube or Amazon Fire and Roku. Just download the Locked On app and you'll find it there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. I have so much to talk about today. Oh my goodness, we've got so much catching up to do. So if you are new, you weren't around, I've been out of the country for a couple of weeks. So we've been on a kind of slower schedule. And that means I missed a whole bunch of stuff. I missed the schedule release. I missed rookie minicamp. I want to talk to you about all of it. So we're going to do that, as well as continuing with the Everyman series here, a series covering the backstories of each new Minnesota Viking. But I think the headline right now, maybe the biggest thing, the most salient thought that I had while I was sort of just like distantly following things while I was on my trip, was TJ Hockenson and the tight end room. They brought in two tight ends, and one, it's probably just a coincidence. There's a guy coming off of rookie minicamp, Sammis Reyes. We'll talk about him later. International pathway guy, doesn't even take a roster spot. Like, clearly that means nothing. Like that was like junior Aho last year. Like, it won't even make the roster. Like, who cares? But then they bring in Robert Tonyan. Robert Tonyan making the fourth stop on his NFC North tour. He's now actually suited up, and well, assuming he suits up, he'll have played for every single NFC North team. Fantastic. Mostly known as a Packer, was a Packer for a while, had a year with the Bears, got cut, ended up on the Lions in the back half of last year, and now he's probably just doing the journeyman thing. We'll do his Everyman series another time, but he's somebody with like starting experience. To me, he goes in a bit of the Johnny Munt category, like tier of guy, where like, okay, now these guys are probably jockeying for playing time and maybe even a roster spot along with like Nick Muse. And that's kind of where that slots into me on the roster. But it also kind of makes sense to have somebody competing for that role because of how important that Johnny Munt's role will be with TJ Hockenson out for as long as that will be. Nobody's given anybody any timelines. TJ Hockenson did do an interview, or he did like a piece on with like NFL media, and said, hey, everything's going great. We're super excited about the progress. Said a bunch of kind of nothing things like that, which tells me, okay, so it tells me things are on schedule, right? Because if there were some kind of setback or something, we probably would hear differently. It would sound different, right? So we can still just kind of assume that TJ Hockenson is on whatever schedule has been laid out for him, but we're never going to know that schedule. And that's really the bummer of all of this. If you want more detail on that, you can go back. I think I did a show in like February, maybe January about TJ Hockenson and like his timeline. But because he also partially, I think, tore his MCL along with his ACL, the MCL causes the knee to swell a lot, and it's not really safe to operate on that swollen knee, so you have to wait for that swelling to go down, and then you operate on it, and you start the process from there, but it just delays things like a whole month. So that means that depending on where you fall in the 9 to 12 month recovery range, he could be back mid-season. He could be back before the season or after the whole season. Like you could miss the whole season. There are worlds where he's like back for week 1, and I'm sure they're like trying to make that happen, but that would be really pushing it. And they didn't do like the sort of quick turnaround process. It doesn't sound like for his surgery, there's like a real rehab process, and then there's like an accelerated risky process, and it doesn't sound like they did the risky process, if I recall. I don't know. There's more details in that one. So that means we've got games without TJ Hockenson, almost certainly, that we got to plan for, right? And Josh Oliver is probably like the next, he's the next highest paid tight end, and he's probably the next most important tight end. But I don't know if you want to promote him from tight end 2 to tight end 1 just because he's the highest paid guy, because his job is very specific. He's a blocking tight end. There are, times where he'll like go out on a check down or whatever, but that role really works for him. And if you take him and try to make him TJ Hockenson and make someone else Josh Oliver, I don't know if that's better than just letting Josh Oliver do the Josh Oliver thing and making somebody else be TJ Hockenson. And I think that's what Johnny Munt and Robert Tonyan will be competing for in camp. And hey, maybe Nick Muse like has his big year or something like that. There's always the young guy surprises in camp kind of thing that can go down. I don't think I'd put any money on that, but I guess it's fine to add a little bit of competition to that. I don't know if that signing happens. Look, if you got news that TJ Hockenson, maybe he'll start week 1, you're probably not doing this kind of thing. But I don't think that would have been a reasonable expectation anyways. So I don't know if that's really news. What I think it is how happy are we with Johnny Munt? Are we really is he really going to be the tight end 1 for us for half of the season? Or should we maybe give him, some journeyman that he can go beat in camp? And if he does beat him in camp, then we're a little bit happier with that, but let's go give him something to prove. That's, I guess, how I put it. There's other signings to talk about. There's Sammis Reyes, there's James Lynch. Kind of interesting to see James Lynch back. I sort of thought he'd be done. He didn't really have a lot. He played in 2022. He played okay. Did the rotational thing, gets hurt in 2023. So Brian Flores' staff had seen none of him, right? Like they had one camp with him. So it's interesting to see him come back. Maybe there are other people who were in the building that, knew him from back in when in the Zimmer days and stuff that advocated for that. But either way, cool. We'll see him back. We'll see what he can do after injury. And then they got a little bit of competition for Ryan Wright, always healthy to do with specialists, in my opinion, whether or not you're happy with them. So we'll see how that plays out. But a lot of times, well, I don't know, with punters, like it is kind of a true competition. We'll see what Matt Daniels wants to do. And then the cuts for that. So Sammis Reyes doesn't count. He's international pathway. So he doesn't count toward the 90-man roster limit. So you can kind of just stick him to the side. And the cuts, Donovan Manuel and Dalen Baldwin, a couple of undrafted free agents, linebacker and wide receiver respectively. And then the interesting cut is Joe Juan Williams. He gets cut as the corresponding move with James Lynch. So there's two things to process there at once. Again, like in the rotational kind of depths of the roster, but these are both guys that like have made the team. Like these are not guys that are camp bodies necessarily. They're guys that, are walking in with every intention to go make that team. And put out the best tape they can in the preseason. Joe Juan Williams will end up on somebody's team. And he did end up on somebody's team after he got cut from Minnesota. He did end up in Chicago, I think, for a minute, right? And then he actually came back and made a couple of good plays in the end parts of the 2023 season. Did some interesting stuff. So interesting to see him. I mean, he spent time in OTAs, which, by the way, I think they start today, Monday, or tomorrow, Tuesday. So he actually was playing with the ones at times in OTAs and ended up kind of being like a bubble roster guy. So maybe we should talk about that real quick. And if there are any other signings or cuts that I forgot, please let me know. I was kind of only spotty paying attention to it, and it's hard to, especially with the low level guys that don't exactly get a write up everywhere. So let me know if I missed somebody, because I do want to touch everything. But with OTAs coming up, it's kind of the same as rookie minicamp in terms of who's with the ones, who's with the twos, who's doing what or whatever. Not only has Kevin O'Connell kind of made the point, and this is a coaching style thing for him, that spring OTAs, voluntary program, is not an evaluative place. It's not somewhere where you can go and win a job or lose a job. Learn the playbook, learn the new things, improve your technique, let's all learn stuff together, and just like with no pressure at all, everybody try to get better. That's kind of what spring is for to him. And then we can get, super competitive, and your jobs are all on the line in the summer and training camp like normal. We can talk about that there. So that's part of it, but also with OTs, just don't freak out too much about it. Like, you're probably going to see Dallas Turner with the 2s. Like, that's probably going to happen. You're going to see Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard with the 1s and Dallas Turner with the 2s. That doesn't mean that they hate Dallas Turner. That doesn't mean they have buyer's remorse. Don't do it. We see that headline every single year. That's never really what it means. Rookies just start out lower on the depth chart. They have to work their way up eventually, and you just have to wait for that to happen. And yeah, sometimes it never happens, like with Lewis Seen, but you wouldn't expect it to happen right off the bat. So don't freak out in May. But there's also some practices we can overanalyze already in like rookie minicamp, as well as the rookie minicamp signing, which is Sammis Reyes. He was a rookie minicamp tryout. So we'll talk about that, and we also have the Everyman Series entry coming up. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook, a great place to go make a little wager on, say, a basketball game, perhaps, if you're going to be watching those, or a hockey game if you're into that as well. Deep in their playoffs, you can also find NFL futures, all kinds of great stuff there. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So you could do something like, say, the Celtics to beat the Pacers overall in the series. You don't even have to say the game, just like a straight up money line thing. And if you wanted to do that, you can get it, put $5 down on it, and assuming they do win, then you can get $150 back. That's 30-1 odds on like any super, heavy favorite, whatever you want, or you can put it on anything. Doesn't have to be a money line. It can be a prop. It can be a spread, and over under, whatever you think. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every shot count at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Moving right along here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out, and thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day each and every day. When you're done here, go check out Locked On Minnesota Sports and their 24/7 live YouTube channel. But I'm going to be honest, I know you're going straight to Locked On Timberwolves. If you haven't listened to Locked On Timberwolves first already, of course you are. But when you're done with all of that, go to Locked On Minnesota Sports, or just start there, because it'll loop this show, Timberwolves, Twins, Wild, all of it, all day long. You can just accost your ears and eyes with Minnesota sports content, which is what you want from Minnesota sports, and assault. Let's move on. There's two things I want to get to before we get to the Everyman Series. We'll do a little rookie minicamp and then schedule takeaways, although I never really have a lot to say about the schedule release, and other people have way more thoughts on it every year. But rookie minicamp takeaways, I should mention the rookie deals have started coming. I think Walter Rouse, a couple of the day 3 guys signed. I'm not going to cover that here because it's never an issue. It has been an issue, I think, once that I can remember in the last decade across the league. That was Roquan Smith. Maybe there's a Marvin Harrison thing going on, but I think that's a jersey deal. I don't think that's his contract. That has anything to do with his rookie contract, right? But sometimes it takes a while for those rookie deals to come in because the front office is just like doing something else first. When they decide to get it is nothing. If you're concerned about like injury, rookies do have like insurance, and like there's like a policy for if they get hurt in OTAs, their contract doesn't get ruined or anything like that. The only person I think on the team with anything significant to lose by suffering an injury in OTAs is Justin Jefferson, which is why I would not expect him to show up. If he shows up, that probably means a signing is imminent. But otherwise, there's no reason for him to take the field in any capacity until he has that, because an injury would like throw a wrench in this, and nobody wants that. The Vikings don't want that. Justin Jefferson doesn't want that. So I would not expect him to show up to OTAs. And I don't think that that's a contentious thing at all. It's voluntary. He showed up last year to everything mandatory, even though he was in a contract negotiation. I would expect him to approach it the same way. So mandatory minicamp, which is a 3-day thing, he'll show up for that, but not the 10 OTA voluntary days. He can go do endorsements in Miami or whatever he was doing. But with rookie deals, because it never is an issue. It's so much of it is pre-negotiated. The number is pre-negotiated. The guarantee is pre-negotiated. All the stuff that players care about is pre-negotiated. There's some little details like offset language and stuff that maybe will be that can be negotiated with agents and stuff. But ultimately, it always gets done, and every year, especially with Rick Spielman, who always took a while to do it. Kwesi seems a little bit quicker on it, but with Spielman, he would always do it like last, and people would be like, why haven't the rookies signed? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Nothing's ever wrong. It's always fine, and it will always be fine. So there's that. And then, so we had rookie minicamp. We got to see J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner in Vikings uniforms and all that. They got together and did the drills and all that. Depending on what your prior was, you probably reposted a clip or shared a clip on some social media that either made JJ McCarthy look good or bad. And I'm here to tell you to chill the heck out. Oh my God. It's rookie minicamp. They're throwing in shorts. He's working on his footwork. He's changing things. According to Kevin O'Connell, he's kind of said, we're going to like mess with things with him. And you can see it too. One of the things that I saw with the way that he's stepping in is a little bit different. He's trying to add more rotation to that movement, which is one of the things that a lot of people, myself included, had identified as like something that he needs. It seems like the Vikings had the same opinion there, that they want him to like rotate his hips a little bit more, to open up his hips a little bit more when he throws. And if you're a golfer, you get this. Anytime you want to change something about that guy's stroke, it's going to mess with stuff. So like I would expect a lot of misses, honestly, in OTAs and stuff. That is not sign for doom and gloom. He's going to be a work in progress. He's an unfinished product right now, because they're changing stuff about him, and they should. That's better for him long term, and it's not going to go well, and that's what Sam Darnold's here for, so that we don't need to rely on him. You miss as much as you want while you're learning. So we'll see that, but I did see kind of I saw the vision, the intent, what we're going for here, and you just have to get used to that, throwing under that and getting a nice like healthy muscle memory. So that's pretty fun. And then we had the schedule. The schedule is out. We know where the Vikings are going to London. It's week 5, right? With the Jets. That's interesting. Aaron Rodgers could have come to US Bank Stadium one last time, but they sent that one to London. Who knows if he'll even still be playing by him. He's 41, right? So I'm like kind of worried about that coming off an Achilles. But hey, he says he's ready to go. So I guess that's who we anticipate that we play against. Maybe an interesting Sam Darnold revenge game. That's kind of fun. You get the 49ers revenge game in week 2, and then the Sam Darnold revenge game in London week 5. And I if I had to guess, I would guess that Darnold's probably still playing by then. And you've got the bye week 6, a relatively early bye. Otherwise you could kind of look at that bye and say, oh, is that when JJ McCarthy's going to come out? I don't know. Week 6 is a little bit quick, I would say. Maybe he could. But my brain is like half the season. That's like where my brain is at. And there doesn't have to be any rush to hit that bye week. It would be convenient if it happens, but whatever. And other than that, like we've known the opponents forever. You can look at the opponents years and years and years out. And like the second you know which, like who placed where in the division, you know who's playing who, right? So you knew that that the Vikings were going to play in New York this year, but now you know that that's the opener, and you know about travel and stuff like that. The Vikings are traveling a lot more than they usually do. Obviously, they've got a London trip that adds like 10,000 miles or something like that. It does seem like the tougher games are front loaded right now. You got 49ers, Texans, Packers, like you've got like playoff teams or close to playoff teams pretty stacked up. Of the first 8 weeks they've got, or the first 7 games, 6 of them are playoff teams. 5 of them are playoff teams, my mistake. So you've got that kind of front loaded. So Sam Darnold can take all that punishment. And then you can come back against, the Jaguars, the Titans, the Bears, the Cardinals, the Falcons, all non-playoff teams. That's maybe an easier one. But what I found kind of interesting too is that you have a 3-game road trip in November where you go Jags, Titans, Bears. Not a ton of travel there. The Florida, Tennessee are a little bit further, but not too bad going to the East Coast. You'd rather that than the West Coast because of time zones. And then the Bears. And then you've got a 3-game homestead. That's Cardinals, Falcons, and then the Bears. So that's interesting, streaky like that. You don't usually see a lot of that, like those threefers, but that's the order of things. And we are ending the season again with Packers at home and then at Detroit Lions. Same way we ended the season last year. We'll see if that's even meaningful. Like, here's the deal. This is a rookie quarterback season. And if you listen to me on Locked On NFL, which I do Tuesdays with Ross Jackson, which I'll be back on that now too, because I'm back in the country. I say it every time we talk about like the teams. Every year there's a couple of teams with the rookie QBs. All these teams ever care about is if the QB is good. This does not have to be the year. It's nice to have Sam Darnold, nice to have, something so you can be competitive and hey, maybe something crazy happens. You never know. But, maybe CJ, he has a CJ Stroud thing where it's week 8 and he explodes. Like, you could, right? You want to be set up for it, but you don't have that set as like the expectation when you're talking about like team building and scheduling and stuff. If JJ McCarthy is good, I'm happy. I'm set. Like, they could be, 5-12, and if JJ McCarthy is good, I'm like, okay. But I feel good about the direction of the team, right? We got things to fix. I'm sure a lot of things went wrong, but at least we got the quarterback. If they have a weird 13-win season with Sam Darnold, if he just like explodes Case Keenum style, but we don't get to see anything with JJ McCarthy, or we find out JJ McCarthy is bad, he goes in for a game and he sucks, and we feel like he's he is like a bust, and the narratives start turning on him and stuff. Like, that's almost a worse outcome, right? Like, long term, it matters if the QB is good. So that's all I care about. So yeah, it's a tougher schedule this year by better measures than win percentage. But it also is just, I don't know, just how the rotation goes. It's not a lot to care about. So, lastly, on this show, we are going to do the Everyman series, which we will go over the backstory, the sort of trial of Dallas Gant and a career that might be on life support. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Gametime. If you are looking for a way to get some last-minute tickets, perhaps to a basketball game of sorts, maybe you've just found out that there are going to be some basketball games, maybe 4 total home games in Minnesota. You want to go check those out. Or, of course, the NFL schedule is out, so you can go find your London tickets, find your Packers game tickets. That's always a big one. Monday Night Football against the Bears. That'll be a fun one. You can go to gametime.co or the Gametime app to get those. My favorite thing about Gametime is how upfront they are. It's all in pricing, so you can turn on a setting that shows you exactly what you will pay at checkout. All fees, all stuff included. So they're not trying to pull one over on you. They show you exactly what it is. None of this like hidden nickel and diming at the end. As well as seat views. You can actually see what it looks like from your seat. So you can be satisfied with the view. You're not stuck behind a pillar. That doesn't happen at US Bank Stadium. But if you're using Gametime to go to a concert or theater or some other, like a comedy show, some other event, that might be important to you as well. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for these kinds of events, because once the event starts, people are just trying to get rid of tickets. So you might be able to come across a good deal, and Gametime will find it for you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I've been doing the Everyman series for a long time on Locked On Vikings, since before I had Locked On Vikings. I was doing it in article versions before that. And when you get to the undrafted free agents, a lot of stuff always goes wrong. These are kids a lot of times that were, 4-star recruits, or if they weren't, that's what went wrong. But they're 4 or 5-star recruits that then they got hurt, or, some other phenom somebody came into the transfer portal and took their job, and now, they didn't get to play for a year or something like that. And for Dallas Gant, it was a slower burn. But let me back up to him as a high schooler in the Toledo area. His dad played at Toledo for the Toledo Rockets. His uncle actually played at Michigan, was teammates with Jim Harbaugh. So there's this interesting thing. It's funny when you get these, when you get like Ohio State and Michigan players, especially. I notice it more with those two teams than like anybody else, but like rival teams players, Mississippi State, where they go, and this is why they didn't want to go to Michigan. Like that'll always be part of the like meet the new recruit article for like Ohio State on some Ohio State blog or something like that. And I guess the story goes that Michigan just showed up too late. He would have been really interested in that. Of course, he had the connection with his uncle and Jim Harbaugh, but he was already being courted pretty hard by Michigan State and Notre Dame and then Ohio State, of course, and was like had already done a lot of the process there. And Michigan invited him to a camp, and he's like, well, come on, guys, like other schools have been in this forever. So he ends up going to Ohio State. And immediately all the coaches are really enamored with his maturity. That was mature is the word on everything. It's like, he's this very like go about your business kind of guy. This very like, humble, hard work, nose to the grindstone type dude. And they're very excited about him as a linebacker, but he's a freshman, right? So, you're going to have your, I don't think he truly redshirted because he did play he like suited up. He played some special teams, but he didn't get a lot of playing time, right? And he took his opportunities on special teams with the Buckeyes. When he got there, they had a pretty stacked linebacker core. One of the guys, like the leader of that unit, was a guy you might remember, Tuff Borland, who ended up having a cup of coffee with the Vikings afterwards as an undrafted guy. And he was kind of the glue of that Ohio State defense. You remember that one. They went all the way to the national championship, and he had that like rep against Devonta Smith. But he was kind of like the dude there. And so you were kind of buried on this depth chart. And all those guys graduate and go off to the NFL. And in 2021, he's supposed to have like he's supposed to be the guy now. He's the leader. He's the linebacker, right? Like you'll always see this with linebackers in particular. They're really expected to be the glue, to be the leader, the captain. And especially a guy that, has made this impression as this like business, workman-like dude, like, yeah, go lead that. You want everybody to be like that, right? Go lead by example and hope everybody else is that way. And it's spring, headed into the 2021 season. Also, they just kind of came out of the COVID season and all that in Ohio State. They played more games at Ohio State than at some other places that had their whole season canceled. But that's kind of throwing a wrench in things. You can't exactly get the work in the same way that you're used to. But headed into the spring of 2021, where things are starting to calm down a little bit, right? Things are opening up a little bit more by 2021. But he gets a little injury in spring practice. It's nothing huge. It's nothing that, affects anything major, but it holds him out for a lot of that spring program. And he's really frustrated at this. It really takes away his ability. You're supposed to get better now. This is supposed to be the kind of time where he takes charge. He takes the reins. Like that spring was really supposed to be the passing of the torch between all those guys that had graduated after the 2020 season and now him, the new next wave, the new generation. He's a 4-star recruit. He's at Ohio State. He's an Ohio, a Toledo-born, Ohio football. It's serious in Ohio. And this was his moment. And he just has to sit there on the sideline and watch other guys take his job. And sure enough, that's what happens. Other guys take his job. He, again, is relegated to this like kind of spot duty, rotational linebacker. Yeah, I'll be a special teamer kind of thing. And he seems pretty frustrated by this. Although most of the talk about this is like right in the wake of the decision that he makes, which is to go to Toledo, to enter the transfer portal and transfer not only to another school, but to the Mountain American Conference. Way down. That's like a huge step down in terms of like the prestige of the program. But I do think that there's something kind of magical about how like he found a way to play for his dad's alma mater, Big Toledo fans will remember, I think his name was Jim Gant, and Dallas Gant kind of coming in and in Toledo, he did actually he kept playing special teams, but he was also like, he got to be the guy, he got to be the linebacker, the dude that he was supposed to be. And everybody, again, was super enamored with his leadership. And now he's like a veteran guy. He was in his 5th year of college by then. And so he actually was one of those guys that played like 6 years, but he did 2 at Toledo. And racked up all Mountain American stuff and probably was playing amongst players that were a little bit lesser than him. And that was probably apparent. And that's why he's the guy getting, called in. But that is that like, I couldn't get playing time, so I went to a smaller school thing, is a pattern among a lot of guys you'll find that fell out of the draft, that are, the undrafted types that are like, yeah, but give me a chance. I can show you that it was just that situation. And really, I do belong, in that blue blood world that, creates all those NFL players. And that's really the thing on Dallas Gant's plate now to prove is not that, I was a decent college football player in the Mountain American Conference that was just recruited a little bit too much. No, I really did belong at Ohio State. And it was just the spring ball injury circumstance kind of messed me up for that year. And I wanted to get some draft stock. So I went somewhere where it wasn't so crowded. And there's a difference to that. And I think the key there is special teams. Look, when you fall out of the draft, when you're an undrafted free agent, your football playing dream is on life support. And that's not me being like a negative Nancy about it. That is just cold reality. That when you are not a drafted player, unless you're a specialist or you come into a situation like Ivan Pace, where you're just in the least, in this super wide open linebacker room, and you happen to just be this superstar in waiting that everybody overlooked for some dumb reason. You have to be that guy. And so each one of these guys, they're going to come in saying, okay, here's why I am great. And here's why you overlooked me and it was stupid. And for Dallas Gant, it's going to be this transfer thing. It's going to be this you overlooked me because I went to a small school. Even though I was a 4-star recruit, I was on the path to be an Ohio State linebacker, and it just got derailed. And I got hurt. It wasn't my fault. And when you get those undrafted guys that do that small school thing, they don't get credit for it. You don't get any lollipops for saying, yeah, but I tried to crack Ohio State's lineup. What you do get flowers for is playing on special teams. That's going to be the thing that makes you on the team. And we talked about Dallas Gant a lot when I had Kevin Fielder on a couple weeks ago in one of the pre-recorded podcasts. We talked about him as a potential roster guy because of special teams. And the problem is you can't make it as only a special teamer. So he has to also win the fourth linebacker spot after Pace and Cashman and Asamoah and, I don't know, Kamu, whoever else is you've got to beat one of those veterans out and get somebody else cut. That's what Dallas Gant has to do. And hey, look, if he's the 4-star Ohio State recruit that he was promised and it really was just a matter of circumstance, then now's your chance to prove it. And that's going to be where we're at. It's going to be the way a lot of these undrafted guys go is, okay, here's what's wrong. And here's your path to proving that it was wrong. But we'll have a lot of time to go over that. Hey, tomorrow is Twitter Tuesday. Haven't done a mailbag since the draft. So get me your draft questions. You can email me at lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com. You can fill out the Google form in the show notes with draft questions as well. I'm sure a lot of you already have. And I'll put out a call on Twitter later on Monday. So you'll see that as well. I'll see you all for that. And as always, Skol.